Ferrari said they're bringing cool new car parts to the race in Japan at Suzuka. It looks like their new idea for making the car faster has tons of room to get even better. The big question is whether they can actually make it work after changing how they think about building the car and most importantly making a steady base to add new parts to. Ferrari will use the Suzuka race as the first time to show off some of the upgrades they planned for the 2.0 version of the car, which will be totally finished at the next race in Imola. But after what team boss Fred Vasseur said lately, could we see Ferrari fighting to win the race in Suzuka? And even more exciting, have they already gotten really close to beating Red Bull? Ferrari's new design let the team build something steady that they can confidently put new upgrades on. Unlike the past few years, this time the team is sure that the upgrades will work because the car is way more stable than it used to be. Talking more about this, Vasseur said that Red Bull will face much tougher competition during the 2024 season starting from Suzuka and beyond. But what special package does Ferrari plan to use to make this happen? Obviously, the main goal of the team is to fix the parts that control airflow, which got a lot of criticism before practice testing because the Maranello team was being too careful with it. However, after the first two races, the F1 world was convinced that the big step Ferrari made is pretty huge, especially when it comes to how the tires wear out. And this got proven even more in Melbourne now. A new version of the floor and the sidepod design would be the two main parts that Ferrari would have to focus on in Suzuka and Imola. But since they won't be able to get as much speed as they can, if they bring both of them at the same time, they would have to pick between one of these two to work on more in Suzuka. It's worth knowing that the other bigger part of these upgrades will come in Imola. The reason why Ferrari are kind of rushing with this choice is because of what they've learned about the car in Melbourne and the low tire wear, since Red Bull is also bringing upgrades that could easily turn the car in the wrong direction. Ferrari could benefit a lot if the changes on the rear wing as well as the floor or sidepod upgrades give them a big performance boost in Suzuka, and the style of the track gives them the perfect chance to do so. Obviously, Suzuka will turn out to be a huge opportunity for Ferrari because there's lots of different corners, most of them really fast ones that'll put a lot of pressure on how much downforce the car needs. But on top of that, it has a few slow corners as well, which would then again be super important for the car's performance in all kinds of situations. Suzuka gives the perfect place to learn as much as you can about the car. And obviously nothing compares with the S-curves in the first part that put a lot of stress on the tires and would be a massive challenge for cars like the Mercedes W15 because of how fast those corners are. So Jacques Clear, who is one of the main engineers in the Ferrari driver training program, thinks that Suzuka would give them a really good chance to get even more performance out of the newly developed rear wing that they first showed in Melbourne. Of course, this is just one of the first upgrades that they've made about getting better in the aerodynamic area. But Ferrari feels like they have the momentum on their side in order to win for 2 weekends in a row, which if we look at the overall performance in Melbourne is not that crazy of an idea. What's even more important is that these upgrades in Suzuka would decide the direction that Ferrari would move for the rest of the season. And when talking about this topic, Vasseur is totally sure that they have the right stuff in their hands. It's now up to them to put more pressure on Red Bull so that the Austrian team would be more likely to mess up. As he went on to explain, in Melbourne, I think it's good proof that when we put everything together, it works perfectly well. I don't know if we'll be able to do it every single weekend, but we can put Red Bull a little bit under pressure, and that's when they're likely to make more mistakes. We have to continue in this direction, and we're much more confident that if we can handle this kind of event now. No matter which part Ferrari chooses, it will be a really big step forward in their development path, especially if you think about the fact that Red Bull are also planning to bring upgrades in Suzuka there, risking a huge amount of performance because of the new idea of the sidepod inlets they're bringing. Even though Mercedes failed to get speed out of this particular design, Red Bull were basically forced to chase it because they felt worried about trying to add more performance to what they already had. And this is where Ferrari sees its chance, as the team that's closest to Red Bull in both championships. When talking about this topic in more detail, the comments that are coming from Frederick Vasseur are pretty hopeful, and they do give a lot of hope for the fans. As he went on to explain, we made a huge step. I think it's more the consistency between the two tire compounds or between one stint and the other one. The car is much easier to drive, much easier to understand also for the drivers, and by the way, much easier to develop. That's probably the biggest step that we did compared to last year, to have something that we can not only easily manage but at least to have a good understanding of the car quite early in the weekend. Confidence is a huge part of the results in our business, and I think we're building up the confidence over the last month, but it was already the case over the last part of the season last year. Obviously, Ferrari's riding on the good feelings from Melbourne and the one to win, which is the first one after the 2022 Bahrain GP for the team and the first one in Australia after 2004. It goes to show that maybe we'll have an exciting championship fight before the 2026 rule changes kick in. While most of the F1 media are doubtful when it comes to Ferrari, because of the recent history that proves they always mess up when things go their way. The new management under Frederick Vasseur, as well as a huge bunch of new engineers from other top teams, have likely done their job in making the team work better together. but more importantly the car's performance. Both of the drivers are giving really good feedback for the SF-24, especially Carlos Sainz, who said after the win in Melbourne that if the car is good, he's proven that he can win races and compete for championships. This opens up a good opportunity for him at Red Bull if Perez fails to live up to what the Austrian team expects. Now this will be yet another question to answer in Suzuka: which driver would be the better one? Because clearly, they're showing up with something competitive in their hands, and given what's happening right now with Sainz, it's clear that the team must look at the long-term picture and not show all of their development plans to the Spaniard, because he'll likely be taking them to whatever team he chooses to go to. This team turns out to be Red Bull by any chance, then Ferrari will put themselves in huge trouble from 2025 onwards. But either way, Sainz could be their only shot at the championship fight because of the determination he has shown in the two of the first races he's raced in. And if it wasn't for the appendix surgery in Saudi Arabia, he would have likely been number one in the Drivers' Championship by now. Even Leclerc himself admitted that Sainz has done a much better job than him in Melbourne, so there was no chance for him to actually challenge his teammate and fight for the win. But either way, the future of the Spaniard remains unanswered, and if he can get the maximum out of the SF-24 in Suzuka, then it's obvious that the team would be forced down a path that they didn't think was possible just a couple of weeks ago, putting Sainz ahead of Leclerc if they want to have a real shot at bringing back the first championship since 2007. Well, with this in mind, do you think that Ferrari will have a real chance to fight with Red Bull and Suzuka in a pure way? And more importantly, do you think that at Imola we'll see them matched up with the Austrian team, even though this sounded impossible just a couple of weeks ago? Let us know in the comments down below.